Previously on the Bells and Bounty Show. Hello, this is episode number 48. Man, we have Stephanie from Creating Within on today. What? That's dope. Yep, we're going to talk about self-love, emotions, higher selves. No, not emotions, not self-love. Yeah, we're going to go there. Okay. You are listening to the Bells and Bounty Show, a podcast for entrepreneurs in relationships. What's up, everyone? I am Megan Pangan, your host, and you're listening to the Bells and Bounty Show, the show for entrepreneurs in relationships. Last week, we talked about how to make that transition between just being in a relationship to being in an entrepreneurship, as John Dumas likes to say. So be sure to check that out in episode 47 at bellsandbounty.com under podcasts. Here's what I've got for you today. Stephanie Fleitas from creatingwithin.com is with us on the show today, and she's going to share with us her thoughts on self-love, some very, very candid and raw thoughts and perspectives on finding that higher self, on liberating ourselves from the attachments that we have in this life, and how we can overcome them and become our best selves, basically. All right. But first, a techie tip. Yay! Technical tips and tricks to help you in your entrepreneur journey. BeHappy.me. Have you ever heard of that? It's an awesome little site where you can create these really fancy typography things where you can create your own quotes. And then you can download the image and then share them on your website or on your Facebook page. And it's really cool to kind of engage with your community by means of quotes or sayings or little phrases or whatever you want to, type in text. And BeHappy.me is a really cool place where it's completely free and really cool way to share and engage with your audience. So BeHappy.me. Really cool. Check it out. So before we dig into this interview, I just want to say that I found Stephanie Fleitas through an interview with Elliot Hulse, one of the people that I am currently obsessed with. And she has a lot of great ideas that I think can be easily kind of glazed over and kind of taken for granted, and a lot of her ideas and her message per se is something that our society really does not focus on and even kind of shuns, because it's very in tune with our emotional selves, our spiritual selves, and what you would call her higher self. And I think it's very important that we get in touch with our higher selves, because that allows for us to attract the best kind of relationships, as you'll see in our interview. And she even touches on some very, very personal and deep and dark things that I applaud her for sharing on the show. And it gives me courage to share some of my darker sides as well. We all have them. We all have some skeletons in our closet. But when we can liberate ourselves from even our deepest and darkest points, we can start to move forward in such a way that is so overwhelmingly positive, by unleashing this incredible power within ourselves, that we can liberate ourselves from these attachments, these dark perceptions of ourselves into our new selves every single day. And so here we go. So here's the interview with Stephanie Fleitas from Creating Within. Enjoy. All right. Thank you, Stephanie, for joining us today. I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I stumbled upon you during an interview with Elliot Hulse, because I'm crazy about that guy. I'm just eating up all his stuff. And then it was really cool to finally see like a woman interviewing him. There's a lot of guys interviewing him. So that was really cool for me. And then I listened to the whole thing, and it was long, but it was really, it was so like, just really insightful. Like, I really loved what you guys talked about. And I just had a few questions first off for you.
Of course.
Yeah. How did you come to this idea, this concept of attaining your higher self? As you know, I was looking at your website and stuff and what you're doing, and I really love your message, and I want to just bring that to our listeners and how you came to that concept.
Thank you. It's just something since I was little, that has always kind of been with me. I felt really out of place growing up.
Uh-huh.
I was very highly empathetic, and kind of always being able to tune into people's feelings, and just always bombarded with a bunch of energy. But I've always been drawn to the unknown. So since I was really young, I was just always asking the questions like, who am I? I went through the religious phase.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout that, I was just always asking questions, and just feeling very alienated and alone for a lot of my childhood and teenage growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And through that, I just found a really deep connection within myself and my spiritual side. And to me, the more that I tapped into that side of myself, it just transformed my world,
Mm-hmm.
Outwardly. And so since then, I've just become really passionate about wanting to share that with other people. I've always been drawn to just helping other people, because I feel like so many of us are suffering internally, and to be able to just help others connect with themselves, because it's given me the biggest blessing in my life. To be able to share that with someone else is just,
right.
something that I love.
Yeah, I first came to, when I was growing up, I was super alienated as well. Like, I had like one friend at every grade and stuff like that. I always felt alone, but I wasn't really asking myself questions about why. I wasn't that intuitive like you were. But I feel that alienation helps kind of push you towards getting in touch with your inner self, this awareness. Why do you feel that people are kind of they kind of shun that away? This idea of getting back to your body and being more aware about your feelings. Why do you think that's an issue for some people?
I think it's our natural state. I think naturally we want to be in touch with that, but because of the way that this human experience is kind of built in our society, everywhere from, our entire society and just our culture, watching TV, anything, it's constantly, it's never, our society does not promote emotions. It promotes logic and thinking. So the emotional world is not something that we give a lot of attention to. In fact, it's something where it's like, stay away from that.
Right.
So it's almost like we've been programmed for so many years and centuries, because this, who we are, like most of us are not really even in tune with who we are. We've taken on values and our belief systems that come really from our families.
Right.
And that's a cycle, because it's centuries and centuries back. So most of us are really not in tune with that, but not because I don't think that we don't want to. I just think that it's so alienated for us. It's kind of like the unknown, and most humans are afraid. We're afraid of what we don't know.
Right.
We gravitate towards certainty. So whenever there is something that's unknown, or even being in touch with our emotions, like that's just a place that it's difficult, because the emotional world is not easy. And our society just numbs us. It's very easy to, lose ourselves in work, in drugs, and going out a lot. And just there's so many distractions that it's just so easy to not be in tune with yourself.
How do you find, I read in your blog that you're around 26, 27.
Yes.
How do you find the best way to influence people with your message? Because I feel like, because I'm 27 as well, I feel like the people around me either get it or don't. This feeling, this awareness about ourselves and being in touch with ourselves. They get it or they don't. And if they don't get it, they're like, get that message away from me. That is weird. That is too woo-woo, right? Like,
Right.
It's so hard for me to try to influence others positively with this type of message, that, the message that you're saying, this higher self. How do you find the best way to reach those people?
To be honest, I think throughout my journey, it's kind of changed. I mean, I'm more deliberate about it now. I have a higher awareness through, with every year that I grow, my awareness increases. But one of the things that I've noticed is attachment is really big in all aspects of our life. And it's almost like we have to detach ourselves from even the wanting to like positively impact somebody, because even in that, even as great as that sounds, that in itself is an attachment. So as soon as you have an attachment, there's expectations. And everything, for me, the way that I have come to understand this reality is everything is energy. And when we are, even when we have good intentions, when we want people to understand something because it's for their betterment, and we know that, man, if you just could grasp this information, like it would just help you so much. And I was like that for a long time because I've always been a caretaker, and I've always wanted to help people. And even growing up, like every time I learned new information or I integrated something in my life, I'm like, I wanted to share it with those close to me. And sometimes the people around me were just not ready for that information. And instead of helping them, I was actually creating a lot of resistance. So I think it's in just, for me personally, I try to not focus so much on how other people are going to perceive me or how I'm going to impact them. But for me, the way that I have started to operate more and more is I just focus on myself and my own growth and what I want my life to be. And I feel like the more that I have just focused on my own path and making sure that I'm in alignment with who I am and who I want to be, and then naturally the people who need me or would need that energy per se, because we all attract people wherever we are vibrationally, I believe, both higher energies and lowers, because we're always, we're not perfect. We're still integrating a lot of parts of ourselves. You start just attracting those people, and the ones that need you will find you, and the ones that are ready to hear what you have to say will be ready, and those that are not, they just won't. And I think for us, it's almost like that's where the lesson is for us. It's learning to be like, okay, I love this person, and as much as I want them to be here, then they might just not be ready for it. So I have to be okay with that within myself. And I think once you can do that, then it'll just allow more people that need to hear your message to come towards you.
I see. So the way to liberate ourselves is to become detached from these attachments. Like, there's so much that I want to tell my younger sister or my cousins about, the paths that are not going to lead them down a happy road, but I have to let that go.
Yes. Yeah, because the more that you let it go, it's almost like it's not caring. Because I know for me, when I look back at the beginning, like, I'm such a caring person. I care so much about everything I do in my life, and especially people. So for me, it was really hard because it's like almost like you think, oh, you stop caring, but it's just that you start reaching a new level of awareness. And I'll tell you that when you can start detaching from it and just being all right with allowing people to be where they're at, and you focus, because this entire reality is just about you. Like, your whole experience for you being here is solely about you. And as long as you can focus on you, the people around you will get the benefit that they need. You'll be able to help them more by just putting all your energy towards you. So the way that you want to affect, like, let's say your cousins and your family members, is by making sure that you're in alignment with your higher self, and that you're following your path, and that you are doing things that are in alignment with who you say you want to be and with whatever your values are. And the more that you can be in tune with that, it's almost like an unspoken energy, because most of us don't realize that we speak to each other and we receive more information on a telepathic level. Like, it's all on a subconscious level. We're constantly receiving and sending information to people, our communities. Like, everywhere you go, you're constantly picking up informations on a subconscious level, depending on how aware you are. But it's happening to us all the time. And the more in tune you are with that, then it's like you don't even have to try, because those people around you will all of a sudden start noticing and being like, whoa, like, what is she doing? Because one of the things I've noticed is the more in tune you are with yourself, like what we all want to do is be ourselves. We all want to discover who that is and be able to just be ourselves and feel that acceptance and that love, right?
Yes.
So if the person who can manage to get closer to that, when you walk into a room, it's like an energy magnet, because the more you work on yourself and the more you learn how to clear, what I like to say, like clean your mirror and separate from the ego to get to your highest self, you become a light. You start attracting a lot of light, and you're bringing light into all these dark spots. So you are automatically a magnet for people, and without them even knowing why, they're being attracted to you, and they'll start seeking you out for advice and for things. And then the things that you wanted to help them with, you won't even have to try, because it'll just happen naturally.
Interesting. How should someone align themselves with their higher self? What would be the first step? I mean, this has always been in you. It's like this, I could see that it's like a natural talent for you to be in tune with your higher self. But for others who are completely alienated by that idea, but maybe they are intrigued, what can they do?
I think to be honest, because I have to, when I look back at, because I have to switch my perspective from where I am now to where I was before. Even though I feel like naturally I've always had an open awareness since I was really young, I was also not always as light as I am today. I was really dark, and I was in a very dark place for a long time. I was very angry, and I didn't want to be here. Very judgmental. So I think that where you can start is really just by spending time with yourself and really wanting to, if you really want to find that happiness and to really just be, because when you talk about higher self, for somebody who may not be in this whole like spiritual world, it might sound like you say like really out there. So it's not even about it, just your higher self. It's just you aligning with who you really are and being able to just take all the barriers that are within you and all these facades and stories that have been given to you throughout your years, and really, who is it that you are? Like, because most people, we're living a life that is not ours, and we're in relationships that we're not really fulfilled, but we're content. It's security, or we think we should, or we're in jobs because maybe our parents wanted us to be, or this is the secure route, but it's not really where our heart's desire is. So merging with your higher self is simply just allowing yourself the freedom to be who you are. And I think you start doing that by really taking the time to care about how you feel and to be in tune with your thoughts. And for me, I can tell you that I guess one of the tools that really has helped me was writing, like keeping journals. Writing out my feelings helped me a lot, kind of just integrate myself, because I started noticing a lot of my patterns and a lot of habits that I had that I didn't like. And for me, writing helped me become even more self-aware. It helped me look inward. And, that may not be for everybody, but I think you can just start finding what works for you. But it's first about being mindful and taking the time to get centered and to become aware of who you are by just focus on how you feel.
Right. That's really, like you said, a lot of really good points about, your observations about society and the life that we're given. And that's really interesting because, yes, we have been fed these stories, a life that is not ours, until we kind of grow up and become really, really aware and decide, okay, who is it that I want to be? And what am I going to do about that? And there's so many times that I think we just coast along. And for a long time, too, I was in a dark space and just going with the flow of things and letting things take me and really not being aware of how I felt about that, or even accessing those feelings, not even being aware how to express it. And writing, too, and making video and basically running this show, similar to what you're doing, has made me more aware of how I'm feeling inside. So that was really spot on.
Wow.
Yeah, fearlessness. I heard you talk about that with Elliot Hulse. Could you elaborate on that a little bit more, and how you were saying when you're fearless, no one can control you?
Well, I think fear is an illusion, and how I've come to understand fear is part of the ego, because your higher self does not know fear. It just doesn't exist, but it's part of the mechanism to trick us. So most of us operate either from love or fear, and again, fear goes back to attachments, because the more that you can learn to conquer your fears and step into that unknown, then you're freeing yourself, because most of us don't do something, or we're hesitant because we're fearful of the outcome. I don't want to leave this relationship because I've been in it for so long and it's the only thing I know. And what if I leave and I'm never going to find anybody? Nobody's ever going to love me. Like, these are the kind of thoughts that we have,
Yes.
And some of them are very irrational.
Yeah. But then they take over, like, oh, what if this, what if that? And yeah, you're right. A lot of decision making is based on fear.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And it's because of the way that we've been programmed, and the ego has a lot to do with that, because the ego wants to always protect you. It wants to protect its identity. And so it's always going to try to keep you safe, and to what it perceives to be safe. So you're always going to have it's always going to give you all these like negative scenarios and all these things that can go wrong. And it's very easy to get caught up in it. And the mind is just it's like so fascinating, because you can really like just get lost in all these thoughts. Because the minute that you feed into one negative thought, another one pops up to give it more like grounding. And then before you know it, you're like down a negative spiral.
Yeah, you're snowballing. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, and just I've noticed just from it's also talking to a lot of people, it just integrating that, like, stepping into your fears is so important, because it does give you freedom. Like, I remember when I was younger, I like started looking at some of the things that I didn't like about myself. And I realized one of the things, for example, when I was younger, I didn't like to be by myself. I always needed to be doing something, whether it was talking to someone, or even when I went out, I had to have a friend with me. And I realized, okay, I obviously have a fear of, like, I don't like being alone, but I don't want to be this type of person, because in life you're going to be forced to be alone. So I started stepping into that, and I would do little things where I started spending more time by myself, and I started making conscious efforts to change that pattern. And I am the type of person now where I was like, I am super social, but I love to be alone. Like, it's the only way to really like center myself. Yes. And I can go have like dinner and lunch by myself, and I'm not worried about like if people are looking at me, oh, look at this like crazy person by themselves. And and I think when you're younger, you care more about those things.
Right.
And even change, like I've become really comfortable with change, and I actually welcome it. A lot of people are afraid of change. And it's all these little things. All these fears are all like bondages, because they keep you in this box, and this like little perimeter you can't get out of.
Right.
So the more that you start stepping into it, you realize it's never as bad as you thought it was. Right. And every time you conquer something that you're afraid of, it makes you so much stronger, and you gain so much more wisdom from it.
Right.
That it really just starts transforming your life.
It certainly does. Let's talk a little bit about self-love. I think, for one thing, we're not really taught how to love ourselves in our formative years. And like a lot of things, it's a lot of outward things. Like, you need to have this to be successful. You need to have a job with benefits to be successful. You need to go to college. You need to get a degree that means something. All these things. But we haven't, as we grow up, we don't really focus on self-love. And I think it's so important. And a lot of times it's grazed over. And even, it's woo-woo when they say self-love. Let's break that down a little bit. What do you think about that?
Self-love. That is a very interesting concept, and it is. I mean, I think that most of us, most humans, that's like our biggest stuff. That most of our issues all come down to self-love. When you break it down, when you get down into all the beliefs, most of us suffer from some sort of lack of self-worth and self-love. So it's the most important thing, but our society, again, it doesn't promote it because I think, in a way, I mean, this conversation could go so many
I
ways.
know. We only have 30 minutes.
I
But, you
know.
know.
But no, I guess to give more of a concise answer, self-love is super important because it just determines everything. I mean, that from what you're going to accept to, how the kind of goals that you're going to allow yourself to achieve, how far you're going to dream, what you're going to go after, and just the type of relationships that you bring into your space. And also, when you're because there's so many different levels. Like,
Well,
I think
how did you make that transition? Because you said you started in you had your moments of dark areas, and then you started to become more aware, and you started to make a change. And obviously, there was a moment when you're like, I need to love myself.
yes. I think that a lot of that had to do with me. I had a turning point in my life where growing up, I just, like, when it came to friends, it was really hard for me to maintain friendships, especially with women, growing up. And I remember I was around 16, and I hit a huge, 15, and I hit a really bad depression point
Uh-huh.
where I just kind of didn't want to be here. I just felt so alienated. I just felt like no one understood me. Like, my family just didn't get me. And then, like, my friendships would always go sour. And I just really, like, I didn't want to be here. I tried to commit suicide at some point. And, my mother got me help, and she's like, well, we moved and I started a new school. And around that time, I did start going to therapy, but I got myself out of the therapy myself because I was like, I didn't need it anymore. And I think that how I started shifting was I made this decision in my mind, after I went through that, and I switched schools, and I was like, you know what? I just don't care anymore what anybody thinks. I am so tired I'm already having a hard time about how I think about myself, that to also focus on what everybody else thinks and wants me to be, I just can't. And so it was almost like the minute that I made the decision to stop caring about other people and what they thought about me, it was like it liberated me, and it just started me on this path of, like, I just went inward. And when I went to school, I just said, you know what, I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to focus on me. I decided I wasn't going to date anybody in my school, and just started going inward and maintaining more, to myself. And that allowed me to really get to know myself more. And I hit another period where my mother got really sick when I was 17. She almost died. And it forced me to really dig in deeper because I was at a crossword where life, I felt like I was going to go down depression again. And I had already been to such a dark place. And I remember talking to my angel, and I was just like, you need to give me the strength to get through this because I don't ever want to go that dark again.
Right.
And that forced me I wrote more. You were talking about how writing also helped you.
Yes.
Throughout that time, my writing was like huge for me. I just really dove into that, and I started just diving into spirituality more.
Right. I read thank you for sharing that, by the way. That's very, very candid and brave to share here on the show. But I read your letter to your dad on your blog, and that was really touching. And I know somebody, and you speak about, those being fatherless and the effects it has on people. I wonder if you could elaborate on that a little bit more, because there's somebody very close to me where the effects of being fatherless have really affected him, and it affects me too because I love this person very much, their family, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
With that, it's something that I feel affects so many of us, more and more. It's so common, but you want your parents growing up as a child, you want to have that person, to look up to. And for me, from my, just speaking from my personal experience, my dad was in my life till I was about 5 or 6. And remember, like, I was daddy's little girl, how much I loved him, and that like that protection. And you read that in the letter.
Yeah.
And when he kind of left my life for various different reasons, it was kind of like I didn't think about him a lot. For me, how I dealt with it is, if everybody deals with it different, how I dealt with it is I kind of blocked it out. And every time that I would try to feel sorry for myself, I would always talk myself out of it. And I'm like, no, you're not going to feel bad about yourself. Like, there's people that have it worse. Like, this has made me tougher. Like, so I would kind of give myself these talks. And I would always tell myself that it never really had effect on me. I was always like, I was stronger for it. And it wasn't until when I mentioned that my mother got sick when I was 17, and I started writing this teen book. And in this teen book that I had started writing, I wrote a couple of chapters about certain things that had happened in my childhood. And when I started writing about my father, when I went back and I reread it, I realized, I was like, holy crap, I have abandonment issues. I was like, because up to that point, I couldn't commit. Like, I could not commit to a relationship, even though, I was 17, but still, I remember my mother would always like, why don't you have a boyfriend? Like, and I was like, I always had all of these guys, but I would always find something wrong with them. Or like the minute that they wanted to commit to me, I would like run away. And I realized, I was like, man, I have abandonment issues. Like, I had told myself a belief that I didn't even know was there, that if my own father could leave me, and that's my blood, then what is any other man is going to walk away from me? And so, I think that affects people differently, because it affects, your self-love. It affects your ability to love. It gives you fear of rejection. And so for me, it was that abandonment. Like, I had a fear that I didn't want to open myself to anybody because I didn't want to be abandoned.
Right.
But I realized that and it's almost like that is the story. And so from the personality level, we can buy into that. But you also have to, as shitty as it is to have certain experiences, there comes a point where we have to make a decision and know that we're so much bigger than these stories. And that is, we are these powerful beings, these spirit beings that are immortal, that we're here to have an experience and to be able to transcend everything. And okay, so we had a bad experience. We didn't have our father in our life, or somebody died, or we lost our job or our home. But okay, so that's the story. Now, what are we going to do with that? And so nothing really has any meaning per se, except the meaning that you give to it. And so everything that happens into our lives, I've come to understand that it's just giving you the opportunity to decide what meaning you're going to give to it and how you're going to integrate that in your experience. Is it going to empower you or disempower you?
Right.
And I find that a lot of times it's very easy for us to allow the negative things that have happened to our life and to use us as a crush, and to say, okay, well, now I'm never going to be able to get into a relationship, or I'm not going to allow myself to feel love, or I'm going to feel bad about myself because I've had this thing happen to me. And so we can use that to hold us back. And yeah, is it true? It's true. Yeah, that happened to you. But what are you going to do? How are you going to use that to empower you? Or are you going to use it as a crutch?
Right. Every experience, good or bad, can be turned into an opportunity. And that is so true. I'm learning so much. You're putting into words what is floating around in my mind. And so I hope for, our listeners, that's happening for them too. So rounding out, as we're coming to the end, you've made all of these kind of life observances and you've come to a higher point. How do you feel about your relationships now? What is your perception on going into relationships, being in a relationship now?
Romantically?
Yes.
That's been interesting. I will tell you that once I realized the fact that I had abandonment issues, I went immediately to fix that. And that's how I decided to seek out my dad. So I think where I am today, I'm in a completely different place. I am a person now, and I'm really happy about this, and I thank God every day. And this is something I always pray for, to make sure that I always remain humble and in tune with myself and open. And I'm in a place now where I'm not afraid anymore. I'm not afraid to get hurt. I'm not afraid to lose love. Because the more that I've gotten in touch with myself, and the more that I've learned to love who I am, to love all the beautiful things about myself and all the things that are flawed in me, and be able to recognize those things. It just allowed me to really to be fearless more. Like I've had my ups and downs with relationships. I don't have a perfect thing with it. I'm still learning a lot. I went through a really crazy phase last year where I was like dating like a maniac. I was so obsessed with, I went through the two extremes, and I know that this happens because you have to learn and integrate.
That must have been fun.
It was crazy when I look back at it, because I was more in love. I went through a phase where I wanted to be in love because I was so used to having 2 serious relationships that I was more in love with the idea of falling in love than whoever I was actually meeting. So I was having these like fast, intense, passionate meetings, and then like they would disintegrate as fast as they started.
Oh yeah.
But no, where I'm at today, I say, I feel like I'm in a really good place. I'm constantly learning. When it comes to relationship, that I know that is one of my areas that I've had a lot of lessons. That's like something that my soul came here to learn. And it's making sure to maintain my own energy and to make sure that I'm always putting myself first in that aspect when it comes to relationships.
Right. So what message can you leave for our viewers, either diving into a relationship, because this show is about relationships, diving into a relationship, or maintaining a successful one?
Diving into a relationship, I say the biggest thing is, if you're not centered and aware of who you are, you won't really be able to join with another at the deepest level without losing yourself. So the message of really getting in tune with who you are and figuring out like who do you want to be and what is acceptable to you, because the more that you can learn to love yourself and get in tune with that, it'll allow you to have higher and higher relationships that are more evolved, and relationships that are really aligned with yourself. Because a lot of times we are in relationships that it's just because we want the love, but necessarily the person is not everything we want, and we're putting up with a lot of stuff that normally we wouldn't put up with. So I say, really be in tune with yourself and put yourself first. And for those who are in it, the message is kind of the same. It's making sure that no matter how much you love a person, you don't forget about your goals, you don't forget about your health, and even when you have children, you always have to put yourself first in everything you do. And you'll be able to maintain, because even you noticed in Elliot, when I asked him about his marriage,
right,
that you're able to maintain such a great relationship when 2 people can still be together, but their world is not solely about them. They still have their own goals, they still have their own dreams, and they're individuals.
Right.
Because when you meet someone, I know that we're wrapping up, but just when you meet someone,
keep going.
It's that desire. Like, don't you love it when you meet someone? The whole reason of like dating and that falling in love, it's like that attraction.
Yes.
And it's the getting to know someone that is really enticing. And then once you get to know someone and it becomes very mundane, that's the passion kind of dies out. And that's why I say falling in love is like, you're not always in love. You can love someone, but you're in love
with the idea of falling in love.
Exactly. And I think the way that you maintain that, purely from observation and just some experience, is by always maintaining your own identity and by making sure that you always have your own stuff going on, because that way it's like you're always getting to know the person new again. If you think you always know the person, and if the person is so obsessed with each other that you have nothing else going on in your life except your husband or your boyfriend or girlfriend, then what do you have to offer? You stop kind of growing and you kind of stay stuck.
That's so true. That is so true. When you said losing yourself, what did you mean by that?
Losing yourself. Losing yourself, I mean, it's so easy, especially when you're younger, people who are getting into younger relationships. When I first got into my first relationship at 18, after I found my father, I went from being completely commitment phobia to not ever allowing anybody in, to all of a sudden, like, all my walls came down. Like, it was just like, oh, I'm so open. And
take everything, yeah.
Take everything, I love you. And I, like, loved him so much, and I ended up putting this person on a pedestal. And sometimes when we love so much, or we're so obsessed with a relationship or with a person, you start putting their idea, like you start putting them first and what they think. Because think
Oh, I
about it,
see. Mm-hmm.
when you first start dating someone, like the reason it's so easy to be yourself is because you're not really thinking, like you have nothing to lose. You're like, I don't know this person. You haven't invested any time, any energy.
Mm-hmm.
So you're just you're really yourself. So you say what you want to say without having to double, guess yourself or think about what you're going to say. The minute you start catching feelings, it's like all of a sudden, like you start thinking more, like, should I say this? Should I not say this? How are they going to perceive me? You start living more in their mental space.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you start living out of somebody else's mental space, then who's in your space? And it's like you start losing yourself because you become involved in this other person's energy and it's like before you know it, you don't even know who you are anymore.
Ah, that's pretty key on, especially that obsession. It can take over, and that is how you lose yourself. Yeah, I'm a victim of that too.
I think we've all been at some point.
Yeah, I think you kind of have to go through it like, oh, that's bad. I shouldn't do that again.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, for reals, we're going to wrap up. I don't want to take up too much of your time. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for coming on. I learned so much, and I hope my listeners have too.
Oh, Megan, it's been a pleasure. I'm so glad you invited me on, and I've enjoyed this conversation immensely.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I'm so glad that I found you. There's a lot that you're saying that a lot of people are just grazing over. So I hope that, with this interview, we can spread your message even more. So thank you so much for coming
Thank
on.
you. And likewise to you. And I wish you the best on your journey and what you're doing. You're following your highest joy and healing yourself as you're helping other people too. So
Yes, thank you. All right, Stephanie, have a great rest of the day. I'll let you know when the interview is live, and I'll give you a link and all that stuff.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Stephanie. I was really just blown away by her thought process, how she perceives things, how she even portrays this message of being your best self. And it's a message that I tried to kind of bring to the forefront of this show, but found that it was very difficult to convey. And even so, to those who may be close to this type of message of being in tune with your higher self, your emotions, and for those that may be scared of that, it's only an indicator that it's a step that has to be taken. But, all in your own time, as she said. Some people will never be open to it, and some people are. And for those lucky enough to be making that change, to maybe hitting rock bottom and saying, hey, this doesn't work. I need to do something else. What can I do? And that is being in touch with your higher self so that you can attract and that you can live a life filled with purpose, filled with excitement, filled with love, being brutally aware of who you are and taking that above and beyond just coasting through life and being super aware, being super in tune with, yourself and pushing that ego aside can really bring you to a place of higher living, higher loving, basically your higher self, right? So that was really exciting for me. And I'm so thankful that she was able to come on the show and share her thoughts. And so thank you to you, Stephanie, once again. That's it for today's show. Next week, we have Phil Ferrante and Verena Pangan. What? Same last name as me? Unrelated. Super crazy, cool coincidence. They're coming on the show from Be Fit and Live, a personal trainer's best tool to help them find clients and stuff like that. So they're going to come on the show next week and tell us all about what they do and how they run it together. So look forward to that next week. To find all the show notes for this episode, just visit bellsandbounty.com and sign up for my email list for all the free updates and also a free report on the 5 must-have conversations that make your relationship rock solid. Finally, find me on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter at Megan J. Photo and share this episode with your friends if you liked it. Until then, I'll see you next week in a brand new episode. And with that, I'm going to leave you with the biggest lesson that I got from today's interview with Stephanie. And that is, in order to serve the people around us the best, we must first and continually serve ourselves first. See you next time. Thank you for listening to the Bells and Bounty Show. So if you enjoyed listening today, please rate and subscribe on iTunes. You can find us at www.bellsandbounty.com.